content creator side, so I know he's been doing some 24-hour subathons or whatever he does. But only 5-hour streams recently, so he's all warmed up for today, actually, for his first match of the Swiss group in the Americas. In the bottom right of Dragon Scales, he is the Blue Terran, Vindicta.
Joining the Platinum Heroes as well. Cool pickup for them. Becoming a very cool team in general. As in the top left-hand side, our Red Terran player, it is Dolan.
And these guys have faced off against each other recently in the NA Apprentice. Vindicta did win. I think just Vindicta, it's always hard to say how much anyone is practicing in the region, but Vindicta did go full-time, actually back when ESL announced the 3-year deal. Around that time anyways. And as I was just said, he's been doing a lot of content creation, so you can kind of notice that he's at least playing StarCraft 2, even if it's occasionally like sub-replay tournaments and stuff like that. But I do think he just comes in as the favorite. I think he might have had, honestly, a bit more natural talent. And I don't mean to make that sound bad, basically. I think, for me, I've always just said, like, talent exists, right? Anyone who's like, talent doesn't exist, I completely disagree. Vindicta has had a bit of a boost because he's really talented. He's really fluid with StarCraft. Dolan has always been the straight and narrow, hard-working type to me, who, you know, creeps up every so often as someone who's surprisingly good mechanically, and you're like, oh shoot, okay, but doesn't really cause a lot of upsets, right? It's just very steady improvement when he can give time to dedicate to StarCraft. So there's a chance that the Rock Lee beats the Naruto, wherever you want to put it today, but for the most part, Vindicta is favored.
Yeah, no, I am 100% with you on everything you say. As always, very well informed and informing us. It is just that Vindicta kind of firepower, but like you say, Dolan, like, I think what's impressive to me about Dolan is that his name does creep up so often after so many years still, right? You know, because Vindicta, I guess, has always kind of been that kind of steady name. But then Dolan, like, I see him in a qualifier, I'm like, oh, Dolan's still around. And then he makes it, and I'm like, oh, Dolan made it in. You're like, he's that good right now. And then, you know, here he is again, and, you know, arguably the most competitive that the Americas has been, because obviously this is not just North America anymore. You've got Latin American players taking up, you know, slots that last season we had 16 players just for the North America region, right? Now it's 16 players North and Latin America. So, you know, the fact Dolan is still here is obviously just a testament in itself. And like I say, to me, I guess like that pleasant surprise to kind of still see his name coming around, still be like, oh yeah, this guy's still good. He's still out here playing some games. That's awesome.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to say like I can't judge the actual like talent level, right? That's impossible, but it does feel like Vindicta is more likely to cause these upsets against even other region players than Dolan, who really does stay quite central to North America. Although I think did he go to Valencia? Was he one of the North Americans who did that? But for the most part, stays around North America.
Yeah, I think he was one of the players in Valencia now I think about it.
Yeah, he might have been. But not too likely to cause a big upset. I mean, Vindicta, I think it has to do perhaps less with this kind of vague word that is talent, and probably just more with the fact that Vindicta does kind of just roll the dice occasionally, and that makes you a more volatile player, but, you know, makes you deadlier as well. Again, Dolan, to me, just very standard, very good. Watch him, you know, work on his mechanics and steadily increase, and that's, I believe, how he got through the qualifier. I think I cast his qualifier match, but I don't remember who it was against, but it was just solid play. I think it was a TVP.
Yeah.
And it was solid.
That's awesome, as this game's been very solid and standard as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just in general. Not a lot going on, just in case you're only listening. You're like, tell us what's happening. Really not very much, guys. It's, you know, Cyclone on one side, a Cyclone now coming up on the other. Pretty much dead even down the middle. There's a little bit of a timing difference. There was slightly different setups and so on, but in general, we're both heading towards a Raven. We're both heading towards tanks. It's kind of just your kind of standard package of TVT for the moment. Dolan might be about to lose a unit to a Would've-Mine. He actually retargets that onto the Cyclone. That's a good play from Vindicta. Nice.
Yeah. Really nice. Of course, he had a little bit of a head start, I guess, knowing the having high ground vision, actually looking and saying, oh, there's something on the minimap. But nonetheless, a good retargeting. Dolan was playing a little bit dangerous going up that ramp and not evacuating immediately. Reapers are going to at least get cut off, but they're not, I mean, there's not really much for them to scout at this point in time, but I mean, they technically do all the scouting they could. And then just knowing that the Cyclone is out of the equation, Vindicta can feel a lot bolder with his own Cyclone. and he can feel a lot more comfortable moving out without, being afraid that something's going to snipe his Raven or his Vikings or whatever he's going to get. He is going up to 2 Ravens, and then 3rd CC on location. Dolan going into 3rd CC, yes. Yeah, it's just right there. I'm completely blind. But then he's also going really quickly into barracks.
Yeah, very, very just speedy kind of barracks follow-up. Starport goes to build a reactor for barracks too, and that's in stark contrast to the Starport over here, which takes over a reactor and starts producing Vikings. So Vindicta, a lot more air control, a lot more kind of just really wanted to have the game in his control in general, right? And I think that's a pretty big kind of point to make, that if it's almost like Vindicta's more comfortable in the controlling situation, the longer game, whereas Dolan kind of wants to kind of get in there, juke in and get some damage done and just sort of try and take advantages early and kind of maybe, snowball a little bit from that. So that's kind of how I read into this. I mean, they are 2 styles, and, it's viable to play this kind of no Viking style as well. I mean, we see Bjorn do it a lot. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best style. We definitely see, like, someone like Bjorn pulling it off quite well, but it can be very fragile if, for example, say Vindicta goes to 4 Vikings, it's like, oh, you're not going Vikings? Boom. I'm going to make 2 Liberators. That kind of push is then extremely difficult to stop, because you just cannot stop the Libs from pushing into your siege tank line.
Yeah, you have to play around them more so, try and snipe them before you get sieged up, sacrifice them out of Marines to get them sniped, that type of thing. And yeah, I think, maybe someone heard me say that Dolan's that kind of straight and narrow, hard-working type of macro guy. Not to say that he doesn't have his timings. He absolutely does. In fact, I think his TVP was a lot around the tank push, if I recall correctly. I could be confusing with someone else, but but it's very strong mechanically timed. It's not shenanigans. I don't call them shenanigans. It's almost like he puts on a suit and tie and then like really officially puts on a clown nose. And he's like, yes, quite. Now I'm going to do something like really, really official. But yeah, he'll be the active one for sure, and he certainly is headed that direction in this game. But unlike some other TVTs that I think we see, where the Terrans are so greedy they refuse to scan each other. It's like, if I don't get with a Reaper the scouting that I need, F it, I don't care. They both scanned each other. So Vindicta saw all the barracks and Dolan saw the starport reactor, and they really have a good idea as to what they're doing. Dolan even doing another scan. Wow, the least greedy Terran player I've ever seen.
He is like, I just want to make sure I know everything. You got a 3rd base? Okay, cool. I don't really know what this scan tells you, right? Like, what hadn't he seen that he wants to see on the 3rd? Just the fact that 3rd base is there? Well, the tanks are there.
That is army. Yeah, it's back at home.
It's just such a... It just strikes me as a weird scan. I guess he didn't have a lot of map vision coming into that moment. It is Vindicta with a little bit of a better spread, but yeah, just a little surprised. Just don't feel like you necessarily, like you say, it's like the least greedy Terran of all time. Terrans really appreciate their scans and their mules, right? As hold that thought, because we've got 2 medevacs over here, and he's not going to realize it. Double Matrix, and oh no, he hit the same medevac. Oh. So cool, Nelly.
Almost cool. Almost. Well, yeah, I could see how that was supposed to be the 1-2 punch, but Vindicta seemed really on top of it. Like, as soon as he realized that Dolan was moving out at all with these spotter Marines, so that wasn't even the first one, that was the 2nd spotter Marine, I think he just figured, okay, that's going to happen. And that is kind of on Dolan not to potentially anticipate that, because when he scanned the army, he missed the Vikings, right? So you figure the Vikings are over dead air somewhere, because that's typically what the Viking player will do if they're playing defensively, which, yeah, Vindicta is. So, yeah, maybe if Dolan had thought about that a little bit longer, he wouldn't have made the same mistake, but it's probably the case that Dolan gets a lot of free victories with that 1-2 punch.
Oh, hits the matrixes on the Ravens, so they get a couple off, but then the counter matrixes, so no more can happen, and that's going to slow things down again. Vindicta continues to just control this game, right? I mean, he got rid of the drop on the right side again. There's a couple of Marines just pinging away at a refinery, very minimal effect. And yeah, Vindicta, I say, sort of survives the scarier part of this, is he's kind of evened up the upgrades now, which was the one thing that Dolan did have in his advantage with that faster stim at first. He's now going to grab both the Ravens as well, and so far Vindicta just looking like the stronger player in kind of every aspect of this TVT at the moment, CG.
He's predicting things a lot better. Dolan is trying to make it happen, but not in a particularly elusive way. Not with like lightning speed that can really catch even the most prepared guys off. Because like you watch a better player face a slightly worse player, and like it's evidence that the worst player can know what's going to happen and still not defend it. But yeah, in this case, it feels like Dolan coming in as slightly the worst player, again the underdog at the slightly at the very least. and is trying to do these typical things, and Vindicta just knows everything, and he defends it very well.
Bunch of medevacs load up on sieging, or unloading some tanks, sieging them up. A big push from Dolan coming around that right-hand side. I mean, he's trying to take the position, he's trying to force the issue, but I feel like so far Vindicta's defense has been good, and I do see a Liberator on production. I really think, why the heck not get a couple Libs out? They can do so much in this scenario. And don't forget as well that Vindicta still has his Ravens to make plays with, as well as these medevacs are really just trying to go everywhere, huh?
Okay, that was actually pretty ballsy. That was I'll give credit to Dolan on that one. That would have been unexpected. Fortunately, Vindicta, less so about a common tactic, because I would say that 2 medevac drop and the push on the left was a very probably common strategic choice in TVT. That 4 Doom drop wannabe Doom drop, probably not a lot of people do that. And Vindicta might just have an idea of how Dolan tries to play this out. I mean, truly, at the end of the day, we mostly agree that the person who's playing Marine Tank Viking and is winning the air is the better composition.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Dolan is the one who's on a timer here, needs to get something done, tries to get something done by just rushing on in. That is a decent concave, but are there enough units?
Yeah, I mean, he was running into a lot of tanks. A lot of the tanks initially just were not set up right, which was maybe Vindicta's problem. That's why Dolan looked to have so much potential here at first. Now, as we unsiege these tanks, we're actually going to move forward with the Marines. They're going to get a whole bunch of extra catches, and I do not like this at all for Dolan. He's also very low HP on his Marines, which is really bad because it means they're going to start losing this fight. The tanks keep on going down, and this turns into a complete disaster. Vindicta cleans up everything.
Yeah, kind of see where Dolan was thinking with that push in, but at one point, it really was just his Marines, which is always unfavorable. Like, the interference matrix from Vindicta almost didn't matter in the beginning, because Dolan's Marines are so far away from his tanks anyways. The last couple, of course, mattered a lot. And then Dolan definitely overstayed his welcome, definitely felt the pain of having to stim multiple times, and now is feeling the pain of never making any of those Vikings. The Liberators now the biggest bullies in the playgrounds and are on top of the natural ramp. That is devastating for the Terran's reinforcements.
Yeah, absolutely. As you see our Marines knocking down the refinery, just going to see our Vikings holding position as well, and obviously you just kind of go and do a bit of damage everywhere. Maybe on the left side, Vindicta ain't doing so hot, but I mean, at some point, we got to see Dolan push his way out of this, and that's going to be extremely expensive, extremely difficult to do, especially because he doesn't have any of the units that really help him do that. No Ravens or air control. He's going to run down the ramp now in order to try and help slow it down. Obviously, we do have Vindicta's Marines out to the left side, so they're not really part of this fight. He still gets a good trade. He's going to try and finish off this orbital before he has to leave with these Marines. It ain't quite going to happen, as he is just going to load up and hit the main base instead. So Vindicta just on a streak of damage.
Yep, getting ultimately victories after victories, right? It's not the end of the game quite yet, so getting all those tanks and the medevacs really sucks. But it is non-stop victories for the Blue Terran, who also is about to have 3-3. Dolan's whole idea, as he taps out, that makes sense, that they'd end up winning the game. But his whole idea was going for more Marine pressure, right? He doesn't have any Vikings or Liberators or, well, Ravens, because he lost his initially. But he does fill it out with the rest of the supply of Marine tank. And so upgrades are pretty important. If your plan is to just outpower your opponent's Marine count by, like, say, like 10 or 15, but they have 3-3 upgrades and you don't, that literally doesn't work anymore, does it?
Upgrades are huge. Like, upgrades are massive in TVT. In certain fights, like, sometimes you can see an upgrade disadvantage and it doesn't matter because there's tanks. But when it does come down to these scrappier Marines fighting here, Marines fighting there, and the Marines actually have a bigger role to play, the upgrades are huge on Marines. They make such a big difference, so yeah, that is going to be a game lead for Vindicta. Our favorite does come out with the first point. And honestly, I could see it, going in and, the way I set it up, I said, I kind of see this going back and forth, and I think I do favor Vindicta, but he made it look like he was a heavy favorite in this because he was just so confident. He was all over everything Dolan tried to do. I think the only moment where Vindicta didn't look super hot was that, like, big push from the right side, which almost didn't make sense, and it was so out of nowhere from Dolan, and he just kind of pushed in towards the base, and it was like, oh, I just need to siege up a couple more tanks. Not everything was sieged. That was the only moment he was maybe half caught off guard, and that resulted in the biggest lead of the game for him anyway, right? So, just in general, Vindicta, super solid TVT play, very impressive, and see what Dolan does for game 2. Maybe time to proxy, maybe time to take some sort of edge early, because macro-wise, when it was even, there was just nothing there. Nothing at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that can happen when you have those two different styles if the Viking tank player really is well set up. But I'm gonna compare them to the best Terran players in the world. I'm sorry. Mara versus Bjorn would be similar situations. Mara would be the Viking guy and Bjorn would be the Marine guy. Imagine what Bjorn would be doing in that game. Again, very high bar for Dolan. I apologize. But Dolan went for the emphasis on Marines very early with those two barracks. Yes, it got scanned, but then there was a lot of not action for a long time. And his two drop to the right and attack on the left, I think was very like on the nose for TVT. So it was heavily telegraphed, even if it wasn't directly scouted. So like that's something that concerns me, because if it was a really tight, really fast, really almost so close, almost got him type of game, I'd still be really excited. But it was kind of just a meh, from Dolan. So if he's going to play a similar style, it's got to be like much snappier and much more dangerous. I think the most that I was really like, oh, okay, this maybe could have done something, was his 4 drops that got shut down anyways.
Yeah, 100%. Just and that's why that style's so scary and difficult to play, because you've got to be really freaking good and really active and know the ins and outs of every possible fight you can take. It's really tough. The top right played very well against that style and just very solid himself, shutting down everything. Vindicta taking the win for game 1.
In the bottom left, he is the red Terran player, Dolan.
All right.
Vindicta, what you doing there, buddy? Oh, a 2-Rax opener.
I kind of like it, because my go-to in my head was like, I think Dolan might be a bit cheeky, right? Like, he got dominated in a longer macro game, so maybe he gets a little bit cheeky with the proxy racks. I've seen him do that before, cast him in WTL and so on, so, I actually feel as though I was like, okay, maybe Dolan 2-Racks, and Vindicta's just like, well, if he does that, I'm going to be on top of it. And the 2-Racks in base is not a bad build anyways, to kind of put a bit of pressure on yourself and to still play a decent game from. Like, it's not like it's, oh, it wasn't a proxy 2-Racks, now I'm behind. There's still a lot you can do with these Reapers.
Yes, absolutely. For me, Vindicta is a lot like, many of the other North American Terrans, I guess, along the likes of Massa and Future, which is that while they can at times play very good macro games and mechanical games, so often they seem that their natural state of being is to be more aggressive, is to go for some of the earlier barracks. I feel like it's very in line with a Vindicta. Well, it initially did anyways, back when he was still making a name for himself, which at this point was 3 years ago, man. That flew by fast. Let's see how his control works out, and if he can get any leads. Dolan should be fine to defend this overall, but one bad move with the Reaper and it could get dicey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a micro war that's still going to happen here, and you just got to be on point every step of the way. As Vindicta, 2 Reapers still actually sat at home with 3. He might indeed go across the map, and he's still building a 4th one as well. So now really getting to a point where he's committing pretty heavily through to try and deal some damage here. 2 more Reapers. Yeah, that's a lot of Reapers. And obviously with the factory finishing soon, I imagine we might even start to see a Hellion popping out. He's going to catch the first Reaper. That's a massive start. This is huge, because also behind this, we've now got the barracks building a reactor. This is the only unit on the map. This one Reaper right here. The SCV's already retreated from the low ground, and Vindicta's going to play it patiently. Not run up to the high ground too quickly, but Betty Rishin he did, and now he's going to jump up. I mean, we still have a while until the Cyclone shows up, so this is going to be painful as we just drop grenades on the SCVs. We look for some kills, and yeah, we're counting down for the Cyclone, but it is a while from arriving.
Unfortunately, Dolan's pretty much already dead. As grim as that is, I'll do the caster thing. He's dead. But the pro gamer thing, I don't know which we call it now. But anyways, 10 SCVs killed. That's no gusta.
That is no gusta, yeah. So early in the game, obviously 26-16. Your CC's been delayed as well, so now it's going to be command center timing advantage to Vindicta as well. And he's still got a couple of Reapers around and about on the map. He's bringing the Widowmine forward too. Maybe try and get a catch on the Cyclone if it moves across like he found early on in the last game as well. So just good damage. I mean, losing the first Reaper like that as Dolan is just tough in TVT when your opponent's going to out-Reaper you. And it could have been worse, because can you imagine that Vindicta just went, straight into the base and didn't think twice? He would have had 5 more SCVs, if not more, because it would have been even longer before the Cyclone and just snowballs that much faster. So yeah, I mean, Dolan even got off lucky, and he's still dead.
Yeah, Yeah, actually, yes. Vindicta was scared that there would be a third Reaper about to pop, and then a Hellion as well would be the thing he was scared of. It's very unfortunate for Dolan, who just kind of chose, the wrong reactor timing. You get a faster reactor, maybe you can get some faster reinforcements. You get a slower reactor, obviously you have one more unit to work with, and then didn't get a cautionary factor unit. He skipped out on something very safe and was punished for it. But it really does all start with the first Reaper fight. If Dolan had saved both Reapers, completely different story.
Yeah, completely different. Because then you just play defensive, and you still have the CC timing in your favor and so on. So you can afford to play defensive until the Cyclone's out, and then it's pretty much the end of the Reaper attack at that stage. It's very difficult to do damage from there without giving the Reapers up. So yeah, unfortunately, not the way it goes in Vindicta. Super ahead again. I had this early so much is tough to overcome. We'll see if it's going to be possible. We actually see Vindicta playing a bit of a different style. He goes straight into the reactor on the starport here. He just wants to power up. Obviously, he's going to have a faster stim because it's a 2 racks opening. So, 1 Raven, then just going to go straight to Medivacs and start building into this Marine tank play and just probably get aggressive ASAP. And I don't mind what Dolan is doing. Getting the Ravens out, getting the tanks, going to be a bit more of a defensive play because he's behind. And then also using the Ravens to harass, to try and shut down a little bit of the gap and a little bit of the advantage that Vindicta's set up here.
Likely, not always. Oh, well, shoot. I was going to say. At least he saved the Raven. But it's definitely feasible that Vindicta goes into like a 2-on-1 follow-up. Basically doesn't get Vikings, what I'm trying to say. But that Cyclone was so perfectly positioned. The Vikings weren't even necessary, at least because there are no Vikings. Dolan can escape. But 0 damage done is going to try and get those last few hits as well. Oh... No.
He wants it. He knows where it's coming from as well. Puts himself in position. He's going to have the other Marine as well to corner off the right-hand side. If Dolan's not watching, he is. Good move. Ooh.
Yeah, very, very well done. Dolan actually paying attention. It kind of, to be fair, he had nothing much else going on. But lots of people would just predict that to come home safely. So... Yeah. Definitely good on him to keep in mind, hey, he could be trying to send some Marines forward. And now Dolan has to be very keen on the defense since Vindicta is finally ready to move out. He would love to have that Raven back at home, but 1 Marine is stopping it.
I was going to say, if this is my Raven, I'd be trying to, cast Interference Matrix with it in a couple of minutes, as the Cyclone's going to come in and kill the Marine, which gives the Raven the freedom, but then the actual other Cyclone comes in from Vindicta. Can he get the catch? He'll have the lock-on advantage and the HP advantage. So he is going to get a Cyclone out of this, and the Raven should be away safely. So you get the Raven now, but it costs you a Cyclone. I mean, it's still a pretty hefty price to pay. And a couple of Reapers back in the main base of Dolan just to add a bit more damage.
Yeah. Okay, I like this, actually. So I already was going to say that Dolan is obviously going to have to play the defender's position in this TVT. He's going to have to just try and read Vindicta's movements very well and defend. And, well, 2 locations is easily enough, but he will need a third. So 3 locations is where it's going to get really difficult. And so if that's the case, if you're already going to play defensive, you're already behind in stim, because, again, probably Vindicta went into a faster stim medevac style. Just go mech, and worry about the whole conversation about what's the highest skill cap, what's the best thing to do later. Mech is certainly viable enough that this counts as a okay Hail Mary to me. I'm like, yeah, good choice. This might bring you back.
Yeah, that's it. I'm down with it. It's definitely something you got to do. Play defensive at the very least, and mech is a great way to play defensive on a map that's pretty okay for it. Maybe not the best out there, but viable. Viable indeed, and Vindicta has to try and figure out that this is mech, and once he's figured it out that it's mech, well, he already knows it's mech, but... Ooh! He's going to try and do some damage to kind of stop it getting set up, but the Vikings shut it down immediately. This time, Dolan looking good on the defense.
Yeah. Saw that coming. Also, just really no other place that the Vikings have to be. So, I'm bringing this up because he could do this because of extra thing. It's just important to note that this all should look about as good as possible for Dolan because he's not really being full-on pressured yet. So it's maybe the bar that he has to pass for me to be confident in his ability to actually win this game. And he is passing it, but it's not necessarily the highest bar if we're not having more than 1 attack at a time. Dolan should deal with 1 attack at a time.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a... it's like a starting point, right? It's like, you can do this? Okay, good. Well, that means we at least have a game on our hands, right? Otherwise, it would have become very uninteresting very quickly. Vindicta's going to come across. Now, one thing to remember is Vindicta still has a hefty lead from the start, so he still just has a good numbers advantage. Mech is very good defensively, but with a few matrixes and maybe a bit of a multi-prong, is there a way to potentially break this? I mean, that's a lot of tanks all in one place. I'm not exactly an immediate believer that he can break this, but I guess we'll see very soon. We'll see exactly how Vindicta plays it, because usually when you're ahead with Bio versus Mech, it's hard to end the game, so you kind of have to look for ways to transition yourself into a lead. Maybe kind of rushing up into Sky Terran yourself and just kind of, just going and, go into that more quickly because you can take more bases. We'll see what Vindicta's route is going to be, because generally just trying to attack with the Bio ain't usually it. So, let's see.
Well, the order of how things went down is now really important for Dolan because he slapped down the 2 medevacs. He just properly positioned Vikings. He didn't have to worry about his left side, so he just put him in the right side. Definitely what you should do. He slaps that down, and he takes away, 16 units or however much was in those 2 medevacs away from any potential stop on his third base. Because that was supposed to be the real test. The real test is if Dolan could get his third base up without losing a tremendous amount of tanks or just, not being able to get up at all. So now that he was able to do that, and he did it flawlessly, there was no contest around his third base, that's when I started to feel very confident for a mech player. Like, now the bar has been passed as far as living in this game. When before that third CC, it was very questionable. Now Dolan could absolutely win, especially if Vindicta does get stubborn about staying on Bio. He absolutely should be adding on these starports because Dolan is too tightly defended on his initial 3 bases.
See a few tanks trying to move forward, but the moment that Vindicta sees that, he's probably going to try and jump on them. Just a few Marines, no Marauders in that, which is unfortunate. Otherwise, this may have been an easy couple of tanks grabbed. The army on the right side trying to find something at the same time, but there just ain't anything there. Too many tanks, and at this point, you're basically just saying, cool, I'm going to expand, and, Fusion Core, like I say, maybe set up into a bunch of starports, skip into Sky Terran already, and just make it very difficult for you to take a 4th base. If you can't take a 4th base, you can't contest me in the skies, because I'll have so much more gas than you. So, it's a common way of playing this out. Yeah. It's no surprise to see it, and I'd say that so far Vindicta is doing it absolutely correctly.
And that's, I guess, is another aspect of how Dolan is playing this that's important to note. He might very intentionally be not building Vikings right now because his primary concern was to get enough tanks to take his third. And that's fair. That's a fair call, but he will eventually need to go into Vikings. He knows how the rest of this TVT is going to look. But unlike an ideal situation, let's say that there was no damage done in the early game, it was completely even. The more ideal situation, I think, was to be building Vikings this entire time, but he's had to skip a few times. Still, pretty good count. 15 is damn good. He's got to be careful not to get overwhelmed when he's just expecting it, and he got to be in position too. I actually like that he's adding Thors. I like that he's going to go ahead and secure his position in the skies, as opposed to, well, starting to move out before he actually knows he's got this.
Yeah. The Thors go a long way as well, just stopping Liberator play. Yeah, just like you say, solidifying the skies is a big part of just keeping control. And of course, as well, Vindicta's army is still made up of a good amount of Bio. It's quite spread out right now, but that Bio is one of those things where it actually still has a role to play, but it isn't as supply efficient as a lot of these mech units. So battles are still difficult for Vindicta, and he has to try and probably find a way to trade out a good amount of this Bio effectively, but that's also difficult to do. And you still want a little bit of it. Like, it's a very hard balance to find. I've always found it so frustrating trying to play against mech, because I'm like getting the composition right against it is just like, gosh, it's so hard. It's so easy to make one mistake, take one bad fight, and oh, you can move across the map, can you? Nice to know. And they always manage to do it just as I've thrown my entire army away. So yeah, it's tough for Vindicta. I can feel his, maybe not frustrations, but I can feel his kind of wonderings as to how to approach this. Like I say, we'll see if he can keep it going. He is building up again a lot of the Ravens, so that's going to be a lot of his focus. If he can matrix down everything, then brilliant. But the Vikings are going to kill the Ravens, so it's going to be a very expensive trade whenever Vindicta takes it.
Yes, that is inevitably true. He will lose Ravens. The question is more so, does Dolan have the Vikings in position? And so far with the army, they are definitely in position. But if they're ever caught a little bit to the left and the Ravens coming through the right, then it's going to be potentially a very good trade for Vindicta. So Dolan really has perfected his army. Decent amount of tanks, great amount of Vikings, those Thors just to add that extra security. I love it. and he's moving across the map. He's not gonna, just stay turtling. And Vindicta has not really done a whole lot of slowing this down. So much of his army was elsewhere that he couldn't even catch it unsieged. So he is forced to abandon his 5th base. That's not too big of a deal right now, but it is only one step forward onto his natural choke, and that's the dead zone. If Dolan gets his tank sieged up there, then Vindicta's gonna be in a world of trouble. Right now, he can at least set up some type of surround.
The Ravens are hunting. As the Vikings go left, it looks like the Ravens might come in from the right side and get the Matrixes to allow the engagement into this. Bio just kind of staying tight. If I'm Dolan right now, I'm thinking, well, what's he about to do here? And here we go. Matrix is going to land on pretty much every tank, and then you go for the 360 surround. Vikings have to land to help out a Raven anti-armor missile. Do we have enough here from Dolan? No, we do not. He gets absolutely crushed. And what a play with the Ravens. He waited, he set up, and Vindicta wipes the floor with the mech. Wow.
Oh, that was like, we need to put that in a textbook,
Yeah, textbooks around, boom.
That was the most perfect situation I've ever seen. Usually it's a lot more complicated, and that probably just came down to Dolan not having spotters for those Ravens.
Yep.
I mean, there are so many, I'm not sure it would have mattered, honestly, but let's assume that if his Vikings were in position, they would have killed at least 3 of the Ravens before they got the interference matrix off. That might have been a big deal. But then also that nice surround, even a couple of units coming in from that bottom left, that was just... Well, that was a thing of beauty. Not often how we see the TVTs go when it comes down to mech versus bio, because so often the bio player is forced to play into the air game, like an actual air Viking game. But Ravens have done the trick with those Marauders. Vindicta playing a hell of a TVT.
Yeah, Vindicta was the better player in this series, just plain and simple. Obviously, he was super far ahead in this one, but it was an impressive way of closing it out. And Vindicta